last time I did this, I used the 1118. This is for champagne. Has good acid tolerance and high alcohol content tolerance. So what I'm going to do is add this, plus some yeast energizer, plus some raisins into here, plus probably a little bit of apple juice to get some acidity in there. We're going to let this sit overnight and you'll see it bubble. And when you see the bubbling, that means your yeast is active. I would Google some things and I'll probably place some links online for some effective documents that I read in the process of starting your yeast up. And so we'll let that sit overnight, the yeast will multiply, and we'll have a really healthy colony before we put it in here. Once you get your colony going, you can start adding more and more apple juice to get them acclimated to the pH. Should be probably just fine, but a slow acclimation is always a good thing. Now these have tolerances to pretty good amounts of pH. They're like $1 a piece, and it's not a bad idea. The wild fermentation thing was fun to think about, but just leaving things open to the air allows bacteria in, and I've heard stories where people didn't have a good time a couple days after drinking things. So it's not that much more effort to go through this in the proper way to brew. I do not, however, use sterilizers like they recommend. I did buy some for this tubing, which we'll go over in a little bit on another step, because it is a PVC tubing and they did not have any silicone tubing at the time. So since this can't be boiled, it's polychlorinated PVC, polyvinyl chlorination something, whatever, it's toxic stuff. You really don't want it in your body. We're going to pour through this very quickly when we do our siphoning. I hope that the acids in there don't spin off any of these toxic chemicals in your body. So we'll leave that off to the side for now. And we'll get to some other steps coming up soon. So we're going to activate here. What I've done is to start pouring the 1 gallon jugs in. You'll see this sediment on the bottom. I've already shaken them up so you won't see it as much now, but the unfiltered sediment. Shake it up a little bit. Crack that top, make sure it pops, that's nice. Pouring through a filter, which I boiled as well. I'm just going to pour a little bit down because I'm going to add honey to this mixture, and I want to shake it up and get the honey mixed in. And this provides an easy way to shake and dissolve the honey. So we're going to be dissolving 5 pounds of honey in 4 gallons of cider. We'll pop these and then place 1/4 of this Cooper's raw pure honey, unfiltered. It might be a little filtered, but it's raw. It hasn't been pasteurized, so it contains natural things in it. I've read some places about some techniques where you can let this sit for a day or so and do its natural process with the natural yeast that are already contained in the honey that have been killed by this pasteurized cider. And then when you add in your yeast packet, that's going to take over, do the main fermentation here, and kill off any wild yeast strains probably, just based on control of the system. So we'll go from this to the next step. And I'll show you that process in just a minute. Now you can pour this in here while this container is still fairly hot. You want to keep the final process around 75 degrees. Right now it's pretty warm in here from all the boiling. We have the AC pumping, but I'll store this in the basement and it'll hit 75. Right now it's okay because this has already been pasteurized, so it's not going to kill off any natural things. Now if I was using, later on when we do this proper, we'll be taking it down to the cider press down south of the city, and we'll just ask them to fill it up to about here with cider. And that'll be raw and unfiltered and unpasteurized and the real McCoy. It won't be bottled in this, and we'll just bring it home and start the process from scratch. So we'll go with this and pour this on in, shake it up really good, and you'll notice the honey on the bottom. You don't want to see any honey coating the bottom, you want it to be fully dissolved in there. Then we'll pour all the rest of it in here and throw in 1 handful of raisins, organic, made in nature with this brand. Wonderful. That'll provide the tannins to give the yeast a nice balance of nutrients and to properly balance the wine out. So, next step, take a sip of wine. Just for your viewing pleasure, tonight we are feasting our palates upon Churros Carmenere, a nice Chilean wine, organically grown. It's fantastic. Chilean wines are always wonderful, and they do a really good job. For $9, you can't beat it. We have a few others that we may tour you on as we go through this process, and I'd like you to join me in the next step. And shake it up. Let's see what you got. Shake it up. You'll see the honey on the bottom here. That's pretty cool looking. So, I want to make sure the lid is tight. We're going to shake until you notice that the honey is all gone from the bottom. Then turn it up, and you'll see the honey is stuck to the top usually. So you want to shake sideways and all different angles until you've dissolved that honey, making a righteous starter base for the cider mead. This is a combo project that incorporates the best of many worlds. This does a couple things. If we didn't use all apple juice, we would end up with beer. Or if we used all apple juice, sorry, we would end up with a beer product because there's not enough sugar in here. So when you make a mead, you're putting in like 5 pounds of, I don't know what the ratio is again, I'll have to look it up, but like 5 pounds of honey for a 3-gallon batch approximately. And so then you have to use these mixtures and put them in the hydrometer to figure out your specific gravity, to figure out what you're going to get in the end. So you'll measure your specific gravity at the start and at the finish of fermentation, do a subtraction and then a little multiplication of that figure that you subtracted, and you'll come up with the approximate alcohol percentage by volume or weight, by volume I think. So once that's shaken, I did take a little bit off of one of the bottles and put it in the honey container just to get all the stuff out of here. So we're going to shake the stuff out of this. Make sure we get every little drop of honeybee love. Now it's fun to figure out numbers on things. I'd like to know how many honeybee hours it takes to make a pound of honey, because then we can calculate how many, probably millions of honeybee hours it takes to make 5 pounds of honey. And they fly out, gather pollen, come back in. It's an amazing process. They digest the pollen, store it for food for their little hatchlings, and then we steal it from them. That's some kind of a symbiotic relationship, I suppose, because we give them shelter away from the scavenging of bears and other things. So, who knows? I call it a somewhat symbiotic process. So it looks like we're good there. We'll start pouring it on in. You notice I cap things so that you can't have settling of other things getting in. So, cap things off. Just something sitting on top of it is just fine. Make sure you take ample time to break and sip wine. Fantastic. So the pouring of this is probably going to get pretty boring. I'll spare you.